Welcome back to Breaking Down Storage Tech. Today we're breaking down a 8-item a slice SSI chest haul by bipim. I think that's how you say it. So let's get straight into it. So this haul is 8 items a slice and has 2 double chests of filter space for each item. As you can see here, it has 2 double chests per item. So you can get quite a few items in the 8 per item per slice. So that way you don't have to deal with overflow. And this is a fully hopper locked system. So let's get straight into it. So SSI, or signal strength independent filters, mean that you have this type of filter. And what that basically is you have 2 items here and you have your filter items right here. And you have your item that'll pass on top of it right here, like so. And it should be flipped like that, but it'll pass over the hoppers and the ice, so it'll have the speed of the ice while also maintaining the being on top of the hopper, so it gets picked up. And what'll happen then is once it stacks onto this and any item above 2, it'll power this comparator just enough to power this redstone wire right here, which will unpower this redstone torch and unlock all of this line underneath it, allowing this hopper to unlock right here. Since this hopper is unlocked, it'll start pulling items from the first slot until it's back to this arrangement, and then the whole thing will lock again, and that's how a filter works. Now, the reason we use shroom lights here is mainly just to stop entities from spawning, because there's a couple spaces like right here and on top of things that mobs could spawn, and that could be a bit of a pain, especially if it's like a creeper or an enderman. So the shroom lights, or you could use jack-o'-lanterns, more traditionally used, to get rid of that stuff. And basically what that happens then is the items come through and they just basically go through this straight line, nice and straightforward. And on the other side, it's pretty much the same thing. So going into the next slice, or not next slice, the next filter, it's basically the same, except there's less verticality. There's like 1,000,001 ways to wire these things. As you can see here, this goes more vertical and then goes down, while this one goes like this, and like a more straight line, and then the one on the other side is even more straight. It goes perfectly straight within 2 blocks of height, but it doesn't really matter. They all do the same thing. They have 2 redstone wires, that way when a comparator picks up more items, it powers the system, ultimately unpowering the redstone torch, unlocking the bottom hopper and allowing it to work. Yeah, but on the other side you have the same thing. It's kind of similar, but yeah. And then what happens is, this system's a little bit different. What happens is they go straight down and then they go into alternating hoppers right here after going into the first double chest, and go into here and there. This is just for hopper locking reasons, which we'll get to in a second. Then the next system right here is the same as before, and going down, and then they just go into this chest right here. And this is where it gets a little bit trippy, is this filter right here, because it has this thing and it's taking the output not directly from the hopper, but through the packed ice, as we've seen. But it's just a little bit weirder because now there's air blocks and even more hoppers underneath. But they all essentially do the same thing, going through here and powering, and this has a little bit longer delay, but that's really not important. And this one, this one basically, it locks this hopper, and you can see there's an item here, but that's beside the point. But basically it'll unlock this one, but it'll also unlock this redstone repeater, which is powering this block, which powers this hopper right here. So it unlocks both these hoppers to allow items to flow. Now on the other side, it's a little bit, or pretty much the exact same, except there's a dropper here instead of a redstone dust, and that has to do with how it's hopper locked. But these go directly into a chest and then through 2 more hoppers into the bottom chest. Now, another thing to note is SSI filters. The reason they're so popular is because they're signal strength independent. They don't rely on each other. So what that means is, if this or all of the, let me go to a simpler one. So basically, if all of these were to overflow, like you filled up your entire storage system and it goes up to here, in regular filters, if this starts to back up and it unlocks this, but there's items in here, so the filter still's here, or the items stay in here, the signal strength would overlap onto the other line, unlocking that other line, causing a whole ton of problems. This is why signal strength I is just debatably the best filter, because it is able to deal with this. Like, any overflowing happening in this slice will not affect any other slice. Now, another thing to note is, why are we using scaffolding? This makes it so that it's really easy to change filters. you'll notice that if you ever look at some storage stack designs, they say pre-fill required. That basically means when you're filling the system, you have to fill the sorter as you fill the system because you'll cover it up and make it inaccessible. But then there's other ones that don't require pre-fill. These are this type of filter because of the scaffolding, or you could use really any see-through block that doesn't allow redstone signal to pass through it. But the reason you choose scaffolding is because you can actually walk through it. And now that I'm through it and there's a hole here for B, I can change the filters. So this allows me to, let's say if I have, I don't know, redstone here, but then a new update comes out and redstone actually needs to be in this chest and some new redstone item has to be in this chest, I can just come back here and really quickly, well, I got stuck in here, but it really, doing this in creative is quite hard, but basically I can take out the redstone, put it in here, and then put the item in here. So yeah, that's just a really convenient feature. Now going over the hopper locking. The hopper locking, it has quite a few individual points for hopper locking, but the main points are that there's a couple main lines. This top one is probably the most weird one because it's the inverse. It uses redstone torches to power everything. So when these lines are on, the system is unlocked, and while these lines are off, the system's unlocked. So it's actually the inverse signal, or actually for this line it's also the same, it's inverse. And a few more lines, these bottom ones. But for the majority of them, they are, if it's on, the system is locked, if it's off, the system is unlocked. But this line is slightly different because this right here, it powers a repeater powering this block, which will power or unpower this redstone torch, which powers this hopper right here and this hopper right here, because this powers this block powering the hopper. So it locks these two, and then it puts a repeater right here to continue on the signal so it's nice and tileable. Now what also happens is this center line does the same thing, except it powers a single block, which powers a redstone torch on either side to lock the two respective hoppers. That way you don't have to deal with multiple lines. Now going down another level, this line is much simpler. Basically it's just a lever powering this block, powering these two redstone dust. But if I come around it here, yeah, it also powers this redstone dust, which powers these blocks right here, or no, powers this block right here as well as these blocks. So it powers the repeaters. Let me just, there we go. Okay, that was getting slightly annoying, but basically since it can power this block right here, it'll power this repeater, so it'll lock this hopper, and then this redstone dust right here will lock the dropper, this hopper, and the hopper above, or no, not this hopper. This hopper will be locked by this line right here, which is powering this redstone repeater right here, powering this block, which will power this redstone wire, which will lock this hopper, and it will also power this redstone repeater because this dust right here powers this block, so it'll power this right here. And that is how it locks most of these. Now this part of it right here, this section does operate on the thinking that, okay, if these two hoppers are locked, more than likely these two hoppers will be unlocked as well because they won't be taking them. And it actually overcomes this by using a overflow lock, but we'll talk about that in a second. So basically it unlocks this system, or locks this system right here, assuming that there won't be enough items to unlock the bottom hopper, so this item can be unlocked while the system is idle. But it overcomes this with the overflow filter, or overflow locking. And what this basically is another signal that is also technically hopper locking. But basically what that does is it ensures this line is, this bottom line is getting power when this repeater right here gets power. So if I just, and I'll just take a lever to show this a little bit better. Basically it makes sure that this redstone wire is always powered, even if this redstone torch is powered or unpowered. So it keeps this line locked. So that deals with the edge case that this is overflowing while this is locked, so it unlocks the bottom hopper. Now, it basically repeats that for all of these, so that's why you'll notice that on the second, or in this B slice, it won't lock this top second, or this bottom second hopper. So continuing onwards, there's this line right here, which will power this redstone torch, which will power, or not redstone torch, this redstone wire, that'll power this hopper right next to it, along with this hopper, and it continues through. And it powers this block right, or powers yeah, this block right here, which will power this repeater. And this is to continue on the signal. This isn't actually a really good way of where it will be wired. It's more accurate to power it like this. And yeah, so this is how it'd be more accurately powered. So it'll power this repeater, which will lock this redstone repeater right here, or power this redstone repeater. So it locks these two hoppers right here by powering this dropper, and it locks these two right here by locking this dropper right here, and it locks this repeater by powering this redstone wire through this redstone. And the last, or continuing on, you got this signal right here, which powers this block right here, and it will power this redstone torch or redstone dust, which will lock these three, and at the same time it will also power this redstone, which will power this hopper, and this hopper gets left, I believe, no, it actually also gets powered because this block right here, and it powers through this dropper right here to lock cover these two bottom hoppers, as well as this hopper, or these hoppers, or yeah, these hoppers as well, because you can flick it and then it'll lock all of these. And you'll see right here that these are all locked. And last but not least, you have this line right here, which locks, and this is another case of the inverse. So it requires power to be unlocked because it goes through this redstone torch right here, which will power this hopper right here and power this block powering this hopper, and then these two lines, or these two repeaters, which will power this redstone dust here and power this, unlocking that and continuing on the signal. And then this line right here, or this bottom hopper right here, these hoppers right here get double checked powered by this overflow filter, or not overflow filter, this overflow hopper line. So overall, really consistent, or not really, or yeah, really consistent use of hopper locking. Like, it's very typical and standardized throughout each of the levels. The hopper layout is pretty nice, pretty clean. It has 34 hoppers a slice, so it's not bad for 8 items of filter. And also another thing is the UI, I think, is probably some of the cleanest I've seen, especially for 8 items, just because of how close everything is. Like, you can stand in the middle and reach every single chest right here, and the item filters are in really understandable places. Like, you'll intuitively know, okay, this makes sense for this chest right here, this one makes sense for this chest, this one makes sense for this chest, and this one makes sense for this chest, because of they're aligned to the same line, I guess you could say, or same plane. So overall, a really great system. There is quite a few hopper lines to lock. Like, you do have to do your fair share of wiring, but it's really simple to keep it up because it's just AB tileable. And another thing is that you can access all of the filters. This has no pre-fill required, which is quite impressive. Especially a lot of these bottom filters most of the time require pre-filling here, so you do get that bonus. And another thing to note is this top filter right here. This is obviously not pre-fill required because you can always just come up to the top of the system and just change these filters, so you don't need any scaffolding or anything like that. So yeah, overall, really great system, and yeah, thank you for watching.